You know, I think I've got 60 or 70 clamps in this shop, but sometimes I find myself one clamp short, or I don't have the clamp for the situation, or I'm in the truck and I didn't bring any clamps and I've got to squeeze things together. Well, let me show you 4 or 5 ways to rig up with what you've got on hand in order to hold your work together long enough for the weld to stick, or the glue to dry, or the screw to go in, or whatever it is that has to happen. And then the last thing is going to be to revisit one of the most popular videos we ever made about using a 2x4 to make a jack. So let's just say I've got to edge glue these 2 pieces of oak. I've got to squeeze them up and glue them, and I've got biscuits in there, but I don't have enough bar clamps. I just don't have enough bar clamps, but I've got a drill press, and I've got boards, and I've got dowels. Check this out. Now, I'm not selling my bar clamps, but you could make one of these just as long as you wanted. I don't know, it seems like maybe an elegant solution if you don't have clamps, and a little bit of a silly goof-off project if you do, but I like it. So irregular objects are hard. This old chair's been torn apart for years, and I've got to make a couple more pieces. But just to illustrate the point that there are about 3 ways that you can use to squeeze together irregular shaped objects: rope, wire, and ratchet straps. Let's see if I can even demonstrate that here. That's one. Twist it up. Squeezes pretty good. You can do the same thing, only a lot tougher with wire, like this. Now, a word of warning. You can twist wire so hard that it will cut into the corners of your piece, but that gets pretty tight. This is kind of held. The last one is a good old utility ratchet strap. So you get my point. I have a piece to put in here. I've got to make a new skirt, got to do a little steam bending. But you can just see that if you were just stuck with bar clamps, corner to corner, there's not parallel square surfaces to get a hold of anywhere. There's not a 90-degree angle. But rope, twist it up. Wire, twist it up. Ratchet strap, carefully controlled when all your pieces are in place, can hold irregular shapes into good contact. You may know that I'm remodeling a shipping container into an office. We've got a series about that. But when I was framing and putting the window in yesterday, I ran into 2 separate instances where, with all the clamps that I have in that shop, there was nothing that would do what I needed to have done, so I had to improvise. You see these little blocks? You see how they're just weirdly positioned? It's because of what I had to do to get the window back. And the other one was, this top plate had to be shoved back and screwed into that ledger at the same time. It had to be pushed back, it had to be measured, and it had to be fastened. Have a look at what I figured out for both these cases. So straightening these things in this metal building is like harder than I thought. It's nothing like framing out on a deck or in a house. But what is like framing in a house is using an offset line, a spacer block, to be able to string line a plate. So I've got a 1/2-inch spacer on each end, stretch the string nice and tight, and then by simply measuring off that gauging off that string, I can make sure it's straight enough. Ran into a problem down here, and I'm going to show you a pretty slick way to rig up a clamp, even if you don't have a clamp. So where I find myself right now is I've got to get a 1/2-inch gap between the string and the board, but the crown and the board has me about 1/4 inch. Well, no problem, push it back, you say. But I'm on a ladder and I can't push it back and hold it and measure it and all of that. I need a clamp, don't I? Or I need a spreader off the other side, but I don't want to do that. But I have a screw gun, a hammer, and a wood chisel, which all add up to a pretty good clamp for a case like this. Watch this. Take the screw, and I'm going to put it up about here, and run it in just a little bit. It doesn't take much for a screw to hold a lot. And then take my hammer, engage the claws on the head of that screw, take my wood chisel for a spacer, anything will work. And right now, you see, I can push that back and control it. That's a 1/2 inch. We're not falling off our ladder. We've got the screw started right here. A clamp without a clamp. There we go. The reveal's pretty good. So here's another example of a way to make a clamp when you don't have a clamp. I need to push this back pretty good. I'm going to screw this little piece of plywood in, and then by simply twisting this, see that? It puts a load on that window out against that steel piece. I'm going to do several of those. Top, bottom, and side. Let's do this side right here. You can do the same thing with nails. But screws are so much handier. Just like that. Throw one in the bottom. All right, let's try this again. Threw a spacer in there. And then flex that out. And so you've seen me 100 times sitting at this little desk and talking, right? But it's the first time that you've ever seen the desk wobble, right? That's because we have one of the world's biggest bench dogs holding down the other end. A bench dog is a wonderful, simple, and absolutely bulletproof clamp. By the way, one of the first things we teach in the Essential Blacksmith course, which is in the Essential Craftsman Academy, is how to make a bench dog to fit into your anvil or your workbench or any place else you want a cheap, fast, bulletproof clamp. So maybe you've got a picture frame or a window wrap or something that's you got 4 pieces and 4 miters and you need to clamp them up, and you can clamp from 2 sides, but man, it gets slippery. And when it's all said and done, you want it to be pretty square. So here's something that can get you out of a jam, maybe. A little masking tape. Be a little bit careful. Put it on the tape. Outside corner to outside corner. I don't know if I have enough finesse to do this or not. Leatherman keeps you on the road. So is that perfect? No! But with just a little bit of effort, it could be made pretty good, and this might be the moment to just put your bar clamps on there and kind of nudge it up. But anyway, masking tape, tie wire, 1/4 inch cotton rope, ratchet straps. You'd be surprised at the number of things that'll actually squeeze things together. Now before I head over and show you how to use a 2x4 as a clamp or a jack, here's a small scale version that is the same thing, only different. You got to squeeze 2 boards together. You have a throwaway piece of plywood and a couple pieces of random material that you can screw down onto a diaphragm. You just cut a couple pieces the right length. You got to shim. Pretty good. So this is kind of like the first thing we showed, you know, with the holes and the dowels and the shims. Maybe you're on a kitchen install job and you got to edge glue a couple pieces to make a filler, and you go out to the truck and somebody took the bar clamps out of the truck, but you've got some junk. So you put your pieces together, you put your biscuit joints in there, and you just do this. 2 pieces of 2x4, 1 piece of junk plywood, and some miscellaneous material, one of them being a shim. So we did a video maybe 7 years ago that was really popular about how to use a 2x4 to make a jack. Well, I'm revisiting that, and I had to mock this up because I don't have a real life need for it. So I put an old piece of a 4x4 across here. We're going to hold it up tight. We got a spacer in the middle, which means it's down about 1.25 inches on the right. We're going to demonstrate just how hard that'll push by how hard we can flex that 4x4. But first, one of the comments that came up over and over on that first video was, just cut a board a little bit long and drive it in. Duh, of course you can. You can wedge that in and push really hard. But maybe you're out in the lawn, or maybe you're somewhere where you don't have a hard, smooth substrate for pushing across, but you still need to get a nice lift, and you left your hydraulic jack and your handyman jack and the jack out from underneath the hood of your truck somebody borrowed, and you don't have a jack and you don't have anything except some 2x4s and some screws. You can do this. You see that gap right there? It's about 1.25 inches. We're going to squeeze that almost shut. Now that 4x4 is twisted. It's a piece of junk. But you're going to see a pretty serious push go in by one worn-out old man who doesn't even have to strain himself to do it. My pieces are a little bit the wrong length, so I put a 1/2 inch spacer in there. And I cut this board and I put it on there like that. And I bring it into contact about there. And I just push it. You see that? Look at that. Now a nail gun will hold that just great. But a couple big old GRKs hold it even better. There's lots of places to use that. Plumb? No. Got a load? Yes. Safe as in your mother's arms. And you know what? Sometimes a trick like this will get you out of a bind. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman. Keep up the good work.